Tonight, breaking news, new analysis by Sky News shows that Keir Starmer's received substantially more freebies than any other MP since he became Labour leader. The Prime Minister has come out top of a new league table from our Westminster accounts project. We'll tell you about the warnings from government officials about the dangers of a conflict of interest. Plus, it's emerged that Starmer's top advisor, Sue Gray, earns more than he does after a post-election pay bump. Also tonight, I'm joined by Tom Tugendhat in the first of our Conservative leadership interviews. He says that Starmer's record raises questions. And as we're coming on air, the head of the Metropolitan Police, Mark Rowley, is warning the links between policing and communities are dangerously stretched. Plus, how time flies. It's been 10 years since Scotland's independence referendum. To check what was going on back then, we have got a quiz for you. All that and more with Mercy Muroki and Max Wilson, who will be with us for the next hour. It's Wednesday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, there is not many people who have been Prime Minister, just 9 who are still alive. But I bet there is one thing they would all agree on: the enormous amount of time you have to spend dealing with things that are absolutely not on your agenda. Premierships are very easily sidetracked, and it feels like that's happening to Keir Starmer right now. He's being buffeted by a row over freebies and donations. Now, we know what he wants to talk about, his missions. That's what he campaigned on, of course, during that election campaign. But instead, now he's in office, well, he's spending his time having to deal with questions over how many Arsenal matches he's been gifted and who's paid for his wife's clothes. It's a bit like a giant game of whack-a-mole. And it's not about to get easier, because our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been investigating as part of the Westminster Accounts project. Sam, what have you found?
Well, Westminster Accounts is a major collaboration between Sky News and partners Tortoise Media, and it tracks how money flows through our political system. And it's now been overhauled for the new political era and the new government. And this man is at the helm, and he's been promising he's different to his predecessors. Now, he must declare everything he receives, and he's received a lot. Look at this, £107,000. In fact, even more than that. That's the total gifts and hospitality he has registered since the start of the last Parliament. Holidays, theatre, music, football tickets, hotel stays, all within the rules, Downing Street says. But now look at this from our spreadsheets. Compared to every other current MP, Keir Starmer comes top of the charts. He has accepted more freebies by far than anyone else, 2.5 times more than the second highest claimer of freebies. Now, what this table here is the top 10 MPs who've accepted the most in gifts, excluding legal fees. Now, you might remember in his election victory speech, Keir Starmer promised a government of service. And it's true, he accepted most of these gifts during Labour's preparation for power, nearly £87,000 in the last Parliament. But he has accepted over £20,000 since the election as well. And he's made it clear he thinks the freebies can continue. Now, of course, people have been giving gifts for a reason. Specifically, these people. This is who has given the most gifts and hospitality to Keir Starmer. Wealthy donors, sports firms, music companies, media giants. And the list is topped by this man, Wahid Ali, the media and retail entrepreneur, also a Labour peer, who gave clothing and glasses and unspecified accommodation pre-election, and controversially received a pass to Downing Street in the early days of the Labour government. And his government giving doesn't stop there. He's also given clothing to Keir Starmer's wife, Victoria, which Number 10 didn't immediately declare. Now, Starmer's allies, even Starmer's allies, tell me that Wahid Ali's relationship with Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, is key to his importance at the moment. Now, this was, Keir Starmer said, a swift campaign stop. And it was an expensive one too. Tickets to Taylor Swift at Wembley, gifted to him and worth £4,000. Now, look at this. The source of those tickets are one of the Prime Minister's top donors of freebies, the Premier League. They've given over £12,500 worth of tickets. You can see over here what they're for. They're to Taylor Swift and to a lot of football, including the Euros finals. Football. These are far from the only football games the Prime Minister has accepted freebies to see. Look at the total. Keir Starmer has accepted over £35,000 worth of football tickets alone since the 2019 election. Some in government worry that there are big decisions on a football regulator being made, and that could mean this is a conflict of interest if he keeps going, accepting these types of gift. One official in government, a civil servant, told me Sue Gray should be putting a stop to this. But the Prime Minister's not rowing back. In fact, he told journalists this week, if I don't accept a gift of hospitality, I can't go to a game. You could say, well, that's bad luck. That's why gifts have to be registered. But, you know, never going to an Arsenal game again because I can't accept hospitality is pushing it a bit far. I mean, at the same time, some Labour folk are telling me, asking the question, why can't he pay for the tickets himself? Now, I've learned that Keir Starmer was warned in opposition that his openness to freebies could become a problem. And he did not listen. Now, some of his biggest supporters are beginning to worry. Demands for a tighter political grip in Number 10 are now common across the party. All sorts of people are saying this to me, revealing more frustrations at his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, who we now, as of today, believe is paid more than the Prime Minister himself. And that, Sophie, is not the backdrop the Prime Minister wants just ahead of his first conference in government.
So what's the response been from Labour? How concerned do you think they are by it?
I can't find part of the Labour Party that is not incredibly nervous about all the stories that they're being buffeted with at the moment, whether it's the fact that Sue Gray, his Chief of Staff, is paid more than the Prime Minister himself, which the BBC revealed today, or the extraordinary amount of freebies that he takes. But it all comes back to one question. Does Number 10 have a political grip on events? Now, this drumbeat has been growing, Sophie, you'll have heard it as well, just as me, for weeks. Are they really on top of things? Do they know where they're going? Do they know how to do things? Why is the radar failing? And whether it's salaries or whether it's freebies, there is concern all over the place that things just aren't being gripped.
You mentioned there Sue Gray and the salary of Sue Gray. Just talk a bit more about this woman here.
Highly controversial. Keir Starmer's top aide. She arrived as Chief of Staff more or less a year ago. Her first Labour conference was the one this time last year. She was, for decades, a civil servant in Whitehall and in Northern Ireland, but came across to help Keir Starmer to be his political eyes and ears ahead of the general election. She's used to be the head of ethics for the government, so she, of all people, should have a radar for what's right and for what's wrong. That's what's mystifying people. Yet she herself is at the centre of a row today about her own pay, which is above the amount that the Prime Minister gets. Now, Number 10 and the government deny that she had any hand in her own salary, but clearly a lot of people don't quite believe that and has caused a lot of upset. The question really, I think, and I'm picking this up from a lot of people, is she gripping things enough? Is her political radar, given she was a civil servant for decades, quite good enough? Or does there need to be more people or even different people doing the job of Chief of Staff in Number 10?
And someone's out to get her, because there's an awful lot of stories being leaked about her. That's my other takeaway. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there, our Deputy Political Editor, with his Westminster Accounts investigation. Well, scrutiny of the Prime Minister's affairs is sure to feature in tomorrow's papers. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the Mirror's Associate Editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Telegraph's Deputy Comment Editor, Annabelle Denham. Well, this kind of story about a new government would, of course, be manna from heaven for an opposition that was fighting fit, but instead the Conservatives are pretty preoccupied with a very long, drawn-out leadership contest that still has 4 contenders and still has weeks to run as well. Now, we are hoping to speak to all 4 of the candidates in the coming weeks, but first tonight, we are going to be talking to the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. There he is. Before we get to the interview, who is he? Well, before entering politics, he was a military man, as you can see from this picture here, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan on his way to becoming a lieutenant colonel. He entered Parliament in 2015, making his name as the chair of the Foreign Affairs Selects Committee, with a first bid for the leadership 2 years ago. Now, that time he staggered home in 5th place, but he has done better than that already. He later swung behind Liz Truss, remember her? Both she and Rishi Sunak appointed him as Security Minister. But he is still the only candidate to have never been a Secretary of State. Now, buoyed by one of the biggest majorities of any Conservative MP, he is back for round 2. But will this run end any better than his first? I sat down with him a little earlier. Thank you so much for being on the programme. It's great to have you here.
It's good to see you, Sophie.
So you, of course, are running to be leader of the Conservative Party. Now, if you're going to be a leader, then there's an awful lot of things that come up that you have to respond to. So I thought I'd do the interview slightly differently, because often that's when I guess you find out the kind of leader you want to be in the sort of responses. So there's just a few things that I'd like to get your sort of take on. And the first one is some work that we've been doing with our Westminster accounts team at Sky on Keir Starmer, which has found that he's received more freebies than any other MP since becoming Labour leader. Is that fine, as long as MPs are transparent about it?
Well, I think it's important to be transparent. I think that's the first thing. But the second thing is you've got to ask who's inviting him and why. I mean, I'm sure he's recorded everything appropriately. We've just found out he's maybe been a little bit late on one declaration, but it seems like he's reporting things properly. The question is, why are people offering him so many freebies?
Because he's, lead the opposition, right?
Nice guy.
And then Prime Minister.
Yeah. I mean...
MPs get offered things a lot, though, don't they?
Yeah, but a lot of us decline politely. I've been invited to many different events, different moments, and, you've got to make a decision. Does it look right? Does it smell right? Does it pass the sniff test, frankly? And to be number one in that ranking does raise some questions.
Do you think it passes the sniff test, then?
I think it raises questions.
Party leaders often, of course, have to deal with foreign affairs. In some ways, it's the hardest part of the job. And, of course, you've got a background in security as well. Now, we've seen pagers, we've seen handheld radios exploding across Lebanon. Hezbollah has blamed Israel. Assuming it was them, were the attacks justified?
Look, I'm not going to get into a debate as to who may or may not have caused these incidents to happen. It's pretty shocking, isn't it, to find out, though, that the Iranian ambassador has a Hezbollah pager, and yet they claim to have absolutely no relationship with the organisation at all. It's pretty clear that the network of Hezbollah, which, let's remember, is one of the world's biggest drug dealing and child trafficking networks, has such a grip not only on a country, Lebanon, a country which I lived in for 2 years in the late 90s, but also has such a strong connection to Iran. Iran is, frankly, now become one of the biggest drug dealing powers in the world, and through its Muta'a network, through its child bride network, is effectively engaged in the active trafficking of children for sexual exploitation.
I mean, I can see you kind of sidestepping the question slightly on the attacks being justified. And
the reason I am is because you're asking me to blame a country that I don't know whether or not it was responsible, and I...
But what about just the attacks themselves? Because we know that people have been killed, 12 people killed, including 2 children, 1 an 8-year-old girl. Are these attacks justified? So
I think, first of all, the deaths of children in operation, in any context at all, whether this is an operation or whether it's, something else, which I don't know, is absolutely tragic. But I'm very cautious about laying any blame, because I don't know what the cause was. I don't know what the justification could be, because it's not obvious what's gone behind it.
Are you worried about escalation?
I think you've always got to be worried about escalation in the Middle East. I think it's just one of those things you've got to be aware of, and I'm sure in recent days, if they haven't, the government will have held Cobra meetings to discuss what's going on in Tehran and to assess what kind of responses the Iranian regime may feel.
You're stopping short of condemning the attacks themselves, though, even though they've killed children.
Sophie, the reason I'm stopping short is because I don't know that they're attacks. You don't know that they're attacks. We don't know that they're attacks.
Well, it's not coincidence, is it, that suddenly these pages have all just exploded?
Well, it may not.
I'm not a security expert, but that seems a bit far-fetched.
It may not be coincidence, but it may have been triggered by its own organisation. It may have been triggered by something internally going wrong. It may have been triggered by many different things. So it's possible that somebody loaded explosives into these pages, but somebody else triggered them to go off by hacking them or by doing something else. So it's entirely possible that this wasn't an attack, but the two are unconnected.
OK. Let's talk domestic. You're unhappy, very unhappy about the sentencing of Hugh Edwards. Just explain.
That's right. Well, look, I mean, it's clear that an offence of this kind should get a custodial sentence, and I understand that technically a suspended sentence is a custodial sentence, but the reality is, to you and me, it doesn't feel like one, does it? And it's one of the areas that I've been really active on in the 10 years that I've been in politics, 9 years I've been in politics, because child abuse, child violence is just genuinely horrific. This is why I was so proud to champion Tony's Law, named after Tony Hudgell, the young boy who I think you've met as well, who's just a remarkable individual who was so abused by his parents, by his birth parents, that we felt the right thing to do was to change the law to make sure no child after him would receive such light support from the court system, and that their parents would get the same the same sentence as if they'd assaulted an adult. But also, as Security Minister, my responsibility was fighting child sexual exploitation online. And this is a fight I took to Meta and to other different organisations around the world. And so seeing a prominent individual who is clearly, I mean, by the very fact that he's pled guilty, is clearly connected to the sexual exploitation of children through images, and Category A images at that, so the most serious kind. And to see him walk away with a suspended sentence is something that, frankly, cries out, don't you think?
You've written to the Attorney General asking for a review under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. But, of course, they can't do that because he was sentenced in a magistrate's court.
Well,
I mean, it sounds a little bit like you don't understand how the scheme works.
Well, the thing is, Sophie, he's responsible for the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service. The Attorney General is responsible for asking how for answering.
You've asked.
Hang on, let me answer.
You've asked for it for review under the unduly lenient scheme that he doesn't qualify for.
Well, it's absolutely down to the Attorney General to defend the choice of the CPS to bring this to a magistrate's court instead of to bring it to a Crown Court. That's up to him.
Yeah, but that's a completely separate issue. Well, that's a totally separate issue. You've asked for a review under the unduly lenient sentence scheme that he doesn't qualify for. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, from a former Home Office Minister?
Sophie, this is clearly the responsibility of the Attorney General. And he can also review an interested party, and the Attorney General is an interested party. He can, under the Magistrates Act, ask for a review under the Magistrates' Courts
Not
as
under
well.
the unduly lenient sentence scheme.
He can ask for a review. He can ask for
that was a mistake.
He can ask for a review. Look, the point is that this sentence is not appropriate to the crime that Mr. Edwards has pled guilty to.
OK, now I want to talk a bit about your leadership pitch, right?
Yeah.
Can I be totally honest with you? I'm trying to work out where you fit, right? So if you want your kind of classic right-winger, you go Gemrick. If you want centrist, you go Cleverly. If you want kind of wild cards, you go Kemi. Where do you fit?
Well, I'm not sure that any of them would like your description.
Yeah, they might not, but, you know, I think that's where most people would put them. Well, where do you put yourself?
Well, I put myself solidly in the centre of the Conservative Party on the common ground that is, frankly, conservatism. That's why I've been pitching on some of the issues that we've spoken about, which is defence and foreign affairs. Obviously, that's an area I've been strong on.
The centre of the Conservative Party or the centre ground? Well,
the centre... I'm running to be a Conservative leader, right? And I'm running to unite the Conservative Party and to unite the country around Conservative values. That's what I'm running for. I'm not running to be the Conservative, candidate for another party. I'm running to be the Conservative leader. I guess, is there a risk that if you're kind of pitching it right in the middle of ground of the Conservative Party, that you're kind of falling through the cracks a bit? It's not just me trying to work it out. If you Google, is Tom Tugendhat, these are the options that Google comes up with. The first one's actually, is Tom Tugendhat married, which you might be quite happy with. I am, but yes. The other ones, is Tom Tugendhat a One Nation Tory? Is Tom Tugendhat left-wing? Is Tom Tugendhat a Brexiteer? People don't know. They can't work out where you stand. Well, I don't think it's particularly surprising that having spent 2 years keeping the King's secrets and not doing interviews with you... We've done a few interviews, to be fair. Well, we have, but we did them before. We didn't do them much over the last few years. It's not surprising that people aren't quite aware of the work I've been doing. Do you need a clearer pitch, is what I'm saying? Well, I think the pitch is clear. The pitch is that we need to return the Conservative Party to the service of the country. We need to offer leadership to this country, because, frankly, we are already straying away from it. This is a government under Labour that is serving itself, not the country. This is a leader who is, as you know, enjoying himself at others' expense, not leading the country, and this is a party that's acting in its own interest, not acting in the national interest. So we need to make sure that the Conservative Party is offering something different, and that's exactly what I'm standing for. Because, frankly, having served this country in various different ways for 25 years, whether in uniform or out of uniform in Parliament, standing up against the dictators that we've discussed in the past in China and Russia and Iran, or more recently, not being on your programme because I've been working to keep us safe from terror and from serious and organised crime. That's different.
You backed Liz Truss last time.
I stood against both Liz and Rishi.
But then you went in and then backed.
Well, I was given a choice between two, neither of whom I thought were up to it, and it turns out I was right.
Why did you back Liz Truss? Was it because you wanted a job? You thought she was going to win?
No, I wasn't offered a job, and I didn't ask for a job from either of them, as you can tell by the fact that both of them gave me exactly the same job. So, no, what I did was I looked at the one who was at least having a vision of the future, and to be fair to Liz, that's what she claimed to offer. She then spectacularly failed to deliver it.
You, of course, as you said, you tried to be leader before. You're now, I have to say, last in the betting when it comes to the last four. Well, why are you putting yourself through it again?
I thought we stopped political betting. I thought political betting was a bad idea.
Why are you... well, no, not from other people. I'm not talking about MPs betting. I'm talking about...
You're not telling me that you've been betting?
I haven't done any betting on this leadership election. I can be very clear about that. Why are you putting yourself through it?
Because I think
What's
it
changed
matters.
from last time?
Look, I think this country matters. I think it's a fantastic and an amazing place. I think this country offers an extraordinary opportunity of example to the entire world and offers the opportunity to bring prosperity and happiness to the British people. And I think there are issues that really matter and that I can champion. And whether that's on, making sure that we keep our country safe from the issues that we've just raised, or whether it's about bringing reform to the National Health Service so that we make it more accountable to the British people, or whether it's about bringing down taxes, or some of the issues that I championed 2 years ago on making sure that investments made by companies to improve productivity are tax deductible, or whether it's on lowering corporation tax, both issues that I spoke about. Those are issues that I think matter.
You need a moment to turn it around, though, right? Conservative conference, big speech. Can you give me a bit of an insight into your prep? What are you going to do? Are you kind of like masterminding it? Are you going to, rehearsing in the mirror? Are you going to go suit jacket, sleeves rolled up? What's the plan?
You'll have to wait and see, Sophie.
No notes?
You'll have to... Look,
come on, give us something.
You've heard me give speeches quite often in the past. You heard me give a speech, 4 years ago, after the fall of Afghanistan. You've heard me giving speeches in various...
This is a bit different, though. Come on, give us a hint.
It is different, but I've already given 3 speeches. Everybody's given 1 for their launch event, but I've given 2 more. 1 on law and order, which you very kindly covered. I've given 1 on public services, which you also covered, because these are important issues that, I think you've got to address. You've got to offer the issues in the British public.
What's your top tip just before a speech, then? Are you like...
Focus.
Coffee... little tipple before?
I don't drink,
sugar.
So I'm afraid I'm sorry about that. But but I'm sure that I haven't tried whiskey before a speech, but maybe that's what the Chancellor used to do, isn't it?
It is. Thank you very much indeed.
It's nice to see you.
An interview there with Tom Tugendhat, hoping to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. Well, he was pretty coy about it in that interview, as are many Western governments, but we can get some more now on the latest in Lebanon with more exploding devices, this time reportedly from walkie-talkies. State media say that 9 people have died and hundreds of people have been wounded in the latest blasts. It's reported that handheld radios belonging to members of the militant group Hezbollah have blown up, killing 9 people and wounding others. The militia group has blamed Israel and vowed revenge, but there has been no response as of yet from the Israeli government. The blasts were heard during a funeral this afternoon for the victims of yesterday's pager attack, which killed at least 12 people and injured thousands of others. We can go live now to Jerusalem and speak to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle. Alistair, what more can you tell us?
Well, this was a second wave of attacks by Israel this afternoon, this time, as you were saying, on walkie-talkie devices, and also we're hearing reports that some solar panels and possibly biometric devices were targeted as well. The other significant development this evening is Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, has said that Israel is entering a new phase in this war. And so what we are seeing is a shift not a total shift, but a notable shift away from Gaza as the war there changes, and now a focus from the Israeli government and from the Israeli military on events in Lebanon. Benjamin Netanyahu is under a lot of domestic pressure to resolve the issue with Hezbollah. There's 40 to 60,000 Israelis who are displaced from their homes, and they're under a lot of pressure to get them back there. And so this is bolstering forces up on the northern border, putting more equipment up there, and we'll have to see what the Israeli strategy is, whether or not they continue to push things militarily to try and take advantage after these 2 waves of attacks on mobile devices in Lebanon, or whether there is some other strategy behind their thinking. But we have definitely moved into a new phase into this conflict.
Alistair, thank you very much indeed. Alistair Bunkle there, reporting from Jerusalem. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, we'll get some reaction to everything we've heard so far from our panel. Plus, Federal Reserve has made its decision on US interest rates, which could have a major impact on the presidential race and, of course, on the global economy as well. We'll get all the details from our economics editor, Ed Conway. That's next.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
It's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me!
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello, welcome back. Well, let's bring you now some breaking news from the United States, where the Federal Reserve has made its latest decision on interest rates in the last half an hour. Our economics editor, Ed Conway, joins us. Ed, what have they decided to do?
Yeah, it's a big moment, Sophie, because, we've been waiting a long time for the US to start cutting interest rates. Obviously, the Bank of England started cutting interest rates here in August, but you also have the European Central Bank. They have cut interest rates as well. And now it's the turn of the world's biggest economy, the United States. And the interesting thing here is not just that they have cut interest rates, but they have cut them by by more than expected. So a lot of people thought they might just cut them by a quarter percentage point. In fact, they've cut them by what they call 50 basis basis points, so basically half a percentage point, more than expected. I mean, on the flip side, some people might look at that and be kind of relieved, and certainly you're going to see investors out there going, great, look, money is cheaper, we can borrow more easily. And of course, whatever happens in the US, and this is critical, often finds its way, it percolates around the global economy. But on the flip side, some people might look at this and see that it's a sign that the Federal Reserve, the US central bank, in a sense the world's central bank, are more worried about the state of the economy in the US, about the state of the labour market, about how much growth is going, about the prospect that there could well be a recession in the US. They're worried about that and as a result have gone a bit more quickly than expected. So there's two sides to this. Worth saying as well, we are going to hear from the UK central bank, so the Bank of England. They're taking their decision on interest rates tomorrow. We're going to get that at midday. Does this mean the fact that the Federal Reserve have gone more than expected, does it mean that we're also going to get a cut in interest rates tomorrow? Well, I wouldn't necessarily be so sure. We don't know, obviously, until the decision comes. But they decide on this today, so they've probably already decided on it, and then we get that decision announced at 12 o'clock tomorrow. And given that inflation in this country, particularly core inflation, so the non-volatile stuff, still a little bit higher than they would like, it's touch and go as to whether they're going to do anything. Most economists think they won't, but that they'll continue cutting interest rates in November, so the next big decision for them. But what this underlines, Sophie, is around the world, central banks are now pushing interest rates down. They are taking their foot off the brake. And that is a big moment for the global economy.
Ed, thank you very much indeed. Ed Conway there, our economics editor. Of course, we'll have lots more on that decision tomorrow from the Bank of England. Right, I feel like it's been a bit of a kind of roller coaster programme so far. We have rattled through it. Now it's time to sit down, kick back and have a bit of a chat with our panel who've been sitting very patiently. We can bring them in now. The former advisor to the Conservative government, Mercy Moroki, and the former Labour advisor, Max Wilson. Great to see you both. Let's start off with the sort of freebie, shall we? How bothered are you guys by Keir Starmer taking Arsenal matches or his wife's clothing donations? Max, do you think it's a big deal, or do you think it's something that most people are relaxed about?
I don't think it's a huge deal. I think that is something that all leaders or politicians do, the vast majority. Obviously, with your report with Sam earlier, with Keir coming top, it's obviously embarrassing. It's not a great look. It's very bad optics, clearly. And I think Downing Street will be frustrated that this is the story that's now, going into conference. I think that also the political challenge is that Labour and Starmer ran on a campaign of change. That was the big, big selling point. This is a change from the Tories. And I think there is a danger that now we get sucked into all politicians are the same kind of narrative, which is not where politically Labour want to be.
Mercy, what do you think?
Well, I actually do think it's a big deal. It's a big deal that he's not only on top, but on top by quite a large margin. Of course, those figures are since the last general election, but he's Prime Minister now, so actually they very much matter more than they ever did before. All politicians sort of get gifts, but I think at this particular time, people will be looking at that. People at home, especially, we know they're cutting, winter fuel payments for hundreds of thousands of pensioners who will be absolutely worried and who will be sort of counting their pennies this winter. So actually, I think people will be at home thinking, well, Keir Starmer has sort of presented himself as a man of the people. He's going to change how things are done. And actually people will be looking at this and thinking, this is not a man who represents me. This is a man who's getting tens of thousands of gifts, well beyond what the ordinary person could ever hope to actually get. And it really doesn't look good at all.
Can I ask you, Max, about a story that, look, it might be a little bit inside baseball, but this is a politics show, so you bear with me, right? What is going on with Sue Gray? It feels like this kind of briefing war is kind of erupted behind the scenes. In some ways, the thing that I find most interesting about the story, it's not even the story itself, it's the fact that the story is out there, in the papers, on TV, someone's briefing against her. I feel like it's the kind of splits that you usually see after a few years, not a couple of months.
I think it's the timing that I find particularly interesting, because this is information that's going to go out into the public domain, right? It's always available eventually, but somebody has made a decision to leak this 3 days before Labour conference starts. So somebody is clearly doing this, not only to brief against Sue Gray, but also to make, frankly, her life more uncomfortable when we're in Liverpool. I think if you look at the briefings that the BBC have been reporting as well, they're quite quite mean. I mean, they really are. They are really quite vicious, and I think that probably reflects frustration from some of the advisors that I've spoken to, that their salaries going into government, where there was an expectation that they would raise and be similar to their Tory equivalents. That hasn't happened, and so I think there is a little bit of frustration bubbling over. But I think that not only this is a political problem that could have been foreseen, right? Because the media always use this benchmark of the Prime Minister's salary. But I think it's also a political problem in how government actually operates in Number 10. That you've got, frankly, SPADs who are unhappy with their working environment and probably less able to do their jobs as well.
Mercy, can we chat about the Conservatives? Because we've just had our first interview with the leadership candidate, with Tom Tugendhat. I don't know if there was anything that stood out to you from listening to the interview.
I think it's an interesting leadership election. There's not necessarily a clear winner, although we know from sort of previous polls of Conservative Party members that Kemi Badenoch is their clear winner. Obviously, amongst MPs, it's Robert Jenrick, that's sort of the front runner there. My personal view is that Tom is a good guy. You know, he comes across as a nice, decent man. He talked about Tony's Law, for example, which is something I particularly remember him for, which Tony's Law sort of increased the sentences for child abuse from 14 years, the maximum sentence, to life imprisonment. The maximum sentence. And I think it's interesting how there's a distinction between what kind of person, I suppose, do you want as a leader, and what kind of leader do the Conservatives need now?
So
because
you're basically saying you like him, but you don't think he'd be great. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's the Conservatives do need to ask themselves, really, what kind of leader do we need now? It might not be the leader who we think is the nicest, most decent person, because, you know, they do need to kind of get into fighting mode at the moment. They've had a massive electoral defeat, and they're going to have to rebuild the party over a period of years. And perhaps, you know, he doesn't strike me necessarily as somebody who's going to come out punching, and perhaps that's kind of the leader they need at the moment.
Who would you go for? Pin you down. You don't. It's not the most enthusiastic side, I'll be honest.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think there needs to be a period of reflection about who is the right person for this moment, because we do need to remember as well, the person who's leading the party over the next couple of years probably isn't going to be the person who takes the party into the next general election.
Max, who do you think Labour would fear the most? So who do you think would be the best candidate for the Conservatives?
I think that Jenrick's inconsistency and his so-called political journey is frankly quite bizarre to the Labour watchers, and I think that he would be quite easy to pin down his consistencies. I think Kemi Badenoch has got a lot of qualities. She has a tendency to pick fights, and in opposition, that's a really good thing. But you have to choose the right fights. You have to choose fights that have a political purpose, and I'm not necessarily sure that so far she has done so. I'm a centrist dad, so I would always go for somebody. I think Tom seems to be certainly presenting himself as this sort of kind of centrist one nationer, but he has also got these. He sort of seems to be delving into these weird right-wing, policies around leaving the ECHR, etc. Which I get that you've got to get elected. I get that
Keir
Tory
Starmer's
members
paid for it, right?
Well, I've got some sympathy for that, because Just Eat Your Greens election campaign doesn't really work when it comes to membership. But you have got to look beyond that. And effective opposition sometimes is about, for example, just getting attention and reminding the public that you're there. Because right now, there is some focus on the Tory leadership. But after November 2nd, there won't be.
It's interesting. Thank you both very much indeed. Coming up next on The Politics Hub. A special report about people living in Hull who say the city's riots this summer were no surprise. Hello, welcome back. You are watching The Politics Help. Well, it's been quite a summer for police after the riots, and tonight the Chief of the Metropolitan Police has been warning about a growing crisis in officers' confidence to act. We'll have more on that in a moment, but let's just remind you about events in July in Hull, where for days shops were looted, cars were burnt, and a hotel housing asylum seekers was attacked. Well, now some residents who lived through the trouble have told Sky News they think the violence was deserved and no surprise. They've been speaking to our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, who sent this special report.
There was anger, racism and chaos. What happened on the 3rd of August in Hull horrified people in this city as much as anywhere else. Rioters hunting down people who didn't look like them.
We were there, watching it all.
What did you make of it when you were watching it?
Deserved. Get rid of them. I just think it's wrong. Because I know a lot of people are on the streets and stuff, you know, and it's not right. They're not getting the help they deserve, but they just come here illegally and get everything they want.
Oscar and James say they were there documenting what was happening in their city, but did not get involved.
But you kind of look at me like, you know, I've got a problem with immigrants. I don't have a problem with immigrants. I have a problem with the system.
But quite a few people on that, in that moment, really did. And it was direct, and people of colour were being attacked and chased.
Yes.
And that's overt racism.
Yeah, and I get it, yeah. I believe they just wanted to, you know, to kick back at the people that are in there. You know, I don't think everybody thinks like me and goes, God bless them, they've got a problem too. Because they have got problems. Yeah. They've been through hell.
The Prime Minister described it as far-right thuggery. But we've spoken to many people here who say there was far more at play. Along the Anlaby Road, we met Danny and Lisa.
Good afternoon, Adept.
They're busy, juggling vulnerable people and not enough decent housing.
It's just chaos, innit, to be fair. But it is down to the government to sort it. There's only them who can. And the only way, in my eyes, they'll do it is that they give them equal opportunities. If they're going to allow them, then so be it. But please look after ours as well. Otherwise, it'll just continue, and it will.
Donna feels that frustration too. She's been homeless in Hull for the last 2.5 years.
Our country should be looking after us, not other people's problems. It's not. They want to sort their own problems out first, and this is one of them.
And you find that sentiment all over Britain because successive UK governments have failed to manage immigration. There are open wounds, and the roots of these riots run deep. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Hull.
Let's stay with public order, and the Met Commissioner Samat Rowley has spoken tonight about the violence and the abuse suffered by police officers, and he warned that what he calls the joint effort between policing and communities is now dangerously stretched. He said we should be very clear when people, be they politicians or the public, throw accusations and slurs at the police, they put them in danger by emboldening thugs. Some people won't care about that, the criminals, but everyone else should. I say to all those throwing insults, be very careful which side of the line you are standing. Well, let's get the thoughts now of Mercy and Max. Mercy, what's your sort of take on this? Do you think we need to be more sympathetic towards our police?
I definitely think we do. I mean, obviously, I think every right-minded person would condemn what we saw with the riots. Police do have a tough job. They are not paid enough. There's not enough of them. There's an increasing sort of list of crimes to be policing. There is a real sense, I think, in Britain, especially among sort of working class communities, that there's a sort of lawlessness, antisocial behaviour really takes hold of communities. So the police are doing an incredibly difficult job, and on top of sort of doing community policing, there's also a growing list of sort of online crimes now that the police have to deal with. So I'm very sympathetic towards the police, but again, I think some of the optics, a lot of things in politics do come down to optics, and over the last few years, there haven't been great optics in some instances. It has appeared that there has been two-tier policing. I am actually quite sympathetic to the argument that different crimes and different communities seem to be policed differently. But going forward, I think if there's no doubt about it that we do need more police on the ground. We do need better relationships between police and communities, and we just need a better funded police service, really.
What's your take?
I agree. I think that the police do an incredibly tough job. And I think that, as Ms says, recently there have been some scandals which have painted the police in a very, very bad light, deservedly, in those instances. But actually, on the whole, they do an incredibly tough job. And I think, as you saw with the riots recently, when you've got police being attacked repeatedly, I think I'm hugely sympathetic to them. And I think Mark Gallagher's speech was on while we were on, so I haven't watched it in full. But from what I understand, he's basically calling for a bit more sympathy. But also, I think that a lot of the narrative around policing and improving policing has been around numbers, Bobby's on the beat, etc. Whereas actually, perhaps there are other things that can be done, embracing technology, which I think is what Mark Rowley suggested in order to improve outcomes.
Mercy mentioned there that she does have some sympathy with the idea of two-tier policing, so not everyone is policed in the same way, effectively. Do you think that's right?
No, I don't. I don't really see that myself. I think there were complaints during the riots about the speed with which people were processed in the courts and how what the sentences were. But I think if you're at a riot where hotels are being burnt down, then I think it's pretty reasonable that within a few days you're sentenced for a few years. I think that's a pretty reasonable approach, and I think most people would probably agree.
What's your concerns about it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think my concerns about the two-tier policing stretch just beyond policing, and actually with our justice system, I just find our justice system quite incoherent, actually, in the way certain things are punished versus other things. It seems very incoherent to me, actually, when, for example, you had some people who'd posted horrific things on Facebook, but they'd posted things on Facebook and then ended up in jail. And then you have other people who commit heinous crimes and don't end up in jail. I mean, we've seen the headlines today and yesterday about Hugh Edwards. So I think there is a sense that people get that there is not a fundamental fairness and a coherency in the way we administer justice. So, yes, part of it has to do with the way police treat the different communities, but also it has to do with the way our justice system sort of administers punishment.
But those social media posts, for example, it's not just about posting something on Facebook. It's about accountability and responsibility for what happens afterwards. If you post something that leads to a riot or with people getting hurt, then I think it's reasonable that people are held account for those actions.
I don't think you can be held accountable. I think my point is, OK, if we're going to say people who post things on Facebook that are offensive, that are racist, perhaps Islamophobic, if we're going to say those people deserve to go to jail, well, then surely we must say child sex offenders need to go to jail as well. I mean, that's a much more compelling argument. And I think some of the outrage we've seen over the last few days with the Hugh Edwards story does stem from that sort of same idea of, well, how come Keir Starmer just a few weeks ago said we're going to bring down the full force of the law on people who break the law, and then, just a few weeks later we're seeing one of the most sort of high-profile people who's admitted to committing child sex offences not going to jail. It doesn't really make sense.
OK, thanks both very much indeed, Mercy and Max there. Still to come on the Politics Hub. It's 10 years since the Scottish people had their say on independence, but how much do you remember about what else was going on in the world that year? We are going to quiz our panel. You can definitely play along too.
Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast equivalent of a Pro Plus caffeine tablet that tells you everything about what you need to know in the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me in the Zoom call is Sam Coates of Sky News.
The front runner among the members, Kenny Badenoch, did much worse than I was expecting. Now, traditionally and historically, MPs want to rush to back early a front-runner candidate because it helps your chances of getting a job further down the track. It's good to be seen to be there early with the person who's going to win. And the fact that even though she was topping a lot of the surveys, that she didn't get more than 6 votes behind Robert Jenrick is very ominous for her campaign.
This issue had sort of bubbled away a bit last week. It was always going to come back this week because of the vote, but it was rather blown up again on Thursday due to a very prominent Labour Party commentator wading in on it and saying that Rachel Reeves might need an escape route. Now, that person was Ed Balls, who used possibly one of the most prominent Labour figures to speak about Treasury matters.
Oh my God.
What happened?
Sorry, I've got my cat is fighting another cat through the window. I'm going to have to stop it.
There's a cat fight.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory order, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, 10 years ago to the day, millions of people were going to the polls to vote in the Scottish independence referendum. The No campaign secured a decisive victory in the end, but most of the succeeding debate has seen the Scottish National Party in the ascendant until, of course, they fell into scandal and electoral failure in recent years. Despite that, the First Minister, John Swinney, told an audience today that he believes that Scotland is closer to independence now than it was in 2014.
The contrast over the last 10 years could not be clearer. Decisions in Scotland making Scotland fairer. Decisions taken at Westminster holding Scotland back, and that is why Scotland must become an independent country.
Well, it may be only a decade, but 2014 seems an age ago in many ways. Now, we're going to have a little test to see how much Mercy and Max remember about 2014. You can obviously play along at home. We've got a little quiz about the year 2014. Flashback, the quiz. Ready? Which Conservative leadership candidate was elected to Parliament for the first time? Was it A, Robert Jenrick, B, Kimmy Badenoch, or C, Tom Tugendhat?
Jenrick. It was a by-election.
Yeah.
Very good. It was indeed Robert Jenrick who was elected, as you said, in a by-election there in 2014 to Parliament for the first time. Robert Jenrick. Number 2. Which G20 leader became Prime Minister for the first time? Was it Justin Trudeau? Was it Narendra Modi? Or was it Anthony Albanese?
Tricky one. I don't
Modi?
know.
It was Modi. You got 2 out of 2. Well done, team. A little bit less confident there, but we'll go for it. A correct answer is a correct answer. Who won the World Cup? Was it Brazil, Argentina, or Germany?
2014.
It was in Brazil. Germany won.
It was Germany. It was 3 out of 3. We're doing very well in the room here.
You're really carrying it for the both of us.
What was the biggest selling song of the year 2014? Was it Happy? Was it Shake It Off? Or was it Thinking Out Loud?
Happy? I don't know.
It was Happy. Look at
Pharrell.
this. I think we're going to get a clean sweep here. It was Happy. And finally, which viral trend swept the internet for months in 2014?
Definitely Gangnam Style, surely.
Gangnam Style, Sneezing Panda, or Ice Bucket Challenge? Pressure's on.
Surely. I don't even know what the sneezing panda is. I'm going Gangnam Style, personally.
Let's go for that.
Gangnam Style. Oh, it was the Ice Bucket Challenge. So close, so close. We couldn't have a full house. That would feel like it was a stitch up. So still, it was a very impressive performance. I wonder how you guys managed to do at home as well. If you only got one wrong, that is good going indeed. Thanks both for a very lively discussion. Do you remember much about 2014, or is it all a distant memory?
I'll tell you why I remember a lot about 2014 is because I got pregnant when I was 19. So that's why I remember.
A big time, a big year.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, maybe that's why I did so well in the quiz.
Yeah.
Thanks both very much indeed. Really good to have you on the panel today, Mercy and Max. Well, that is it from us tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee. She's going to have more on that special report from Sky News' Tom Parmenter on the riots on the UK Tonight. And then, of course, at 9 p.m, we have The World with Yalda Hakeem. I will see you tomorrow night.